What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to give you guys another Townace video. Even though the last video with the Townace was uploaded recently, I've actually owned the Townace for about a year now. I've put quite a few miles on it, 3,575 miles on it in the past year. That includes some pretty long trips. I just kind of wanted to go over some of the most common questions that I get and frankly what it's like to own this vehicle after owning it for some more time. Excuse the mess in my garage, still working on doing some spring cleaning. So let me get started with one very common question that I get, and that is, what is the registration process like on this vehicle? Well, that's going to vary a little bit state by state. Currently reside in Pennsylvania, where the process is pretty straightforward for the most part. When I bought this truck, it originally had a title in the US already. So that definitely made it a little bit easier, but it still had to be registered like a normal truck in Pennsylvania, meaning that the weight had to be verified. I did not register this truck as a classic vehicle or a vintage antique vehicle, anything like that. It has a full registration. A lot of mini trucks, K trucks in states around the country can no longer have full registration. A lot of states, including Pennsylvania, require you to register them as an antique if you buy them. This truck can still acquire a full registration, does not meet any of the definitions of a K truck, including the size of the motor, anything like that. So they can still be given full registration, but that requires a yearly inspection. As you can see, I have an inspection sticker there. It's not that big of a deal. One of the things that was most annoying about registering this truck in Pennsylvania was that the VIN had to be manually verified by the state. So I could provide a typical trace of the VIN or show people at the DMV or title and tag place the VIN, but as soon as I send that in, I could not get a temporary plate or temporary registration for this truck. The VIN is a short VIN. It's not 17 characters like a typical vehicle. So because of that, the VIN has to be manually verified by the state once the paperwork is sent in. So you pay for the registration, etc., tax, and then you have to wait. I believe I waited roughly a month and a half, 2 months for my plate to be mailed to me. So keep that in mind. It's not going to be a quick process if you're in Pennsylvania. The VIN is a short VIN and they have to manually verify that. I'm not sure if that's a new thing or if other people have had different experiences, but I definitely had to do that. To find your VIN on this truck in particular, on the driver's side, you can flip this up right here, and that little card right there is where your VIN is located. So easy to get to. Along with registering the truck, some states you might have to go through an emissions process. The current area where I reside, I did not have to go through an emissions process. So in terms of if this truck will pass emissions, I'm really not sure. It is an old diesel. It does not have a DEF system. I'm really not sure. In an area where you would have to pass emissions, at that point, I think it would probably be easier to register it as an antique. Another question that I get a lot with this truck is about parts, whether that be OEM parts, aftermarket parts, parts in general, anything. Simple stuff, oil filters, brake pads, anything like that. So with this truck in particular, the Townace, and I'm assuming the bigger Japanese trucks like the High Ace, the Dyna, the Light Ace, the Nissan Atlas, Mazda Bongo, anything along those lines, the market in the United States does not seem as well established as what is available for K trucks in the United States right now. You might be able to go through some importers and get parts if you ask them. I'm not sure how expensive that would be. I know people do that with mini trucks and it's not that bad, but with these trucks, I'm really not sure what that is like. I personally have had luck using a few different websites. One that I like the most is called Amiyama. I will pop that website up on screen, as well as the other two that I think are some of the ones that you guys should take a look at if you're looking for OEM parts for a Townace or anything similar to a Townace. The thing I like about Amiyama the most is you can put in your VIN and it will pull up all the OEM parts catalogs essentially, so you can find all the OEM part numbers for anything you could be looking for, and then you can cross-reference those. So that's one of the biggest things that I really like about the site. It made finding common things like oil filters way easier. Amiyama, you can also order parts directly on it from Japan. The shipping is a little bit expensive, which kind of makes sense because it's pretty far away. But for example, some of the oil filters that I have right now, I was able to go on Amiyama, look up what oil filter number that I actually needed and cross-reference it with any other kind of oil filters that Toyota had. So that led me to this oil filter number, which is originally for an oil filter for a Toyota, either Corolla or Camry, that was sold in the 80s in the United States that also had a diesel motor, and found out that these part numbers are interchangeable. So finding this OEM part number, I was able to order oil filters directly from local Toyota dealers. Easy. Plus, with this filter number as well, there's actually a Napa model filter. You can walk into Napa and get, my local Napa had one on the shelf, which was super convenient. So for the most part, OEM replacement parts are not impossible to find, but they do take a little bit of legwork. The sites that I recommend definitely help with that. In terms of aftermarket parts, that can be a little bit challenging sometimes depending on what you're looking for. For example, I would love to put a front bumper such as a push bar on this, just because there's really not a lot between you and anything directly in front of you. But for Townace trucks in particular, there's really not a ton out there. So custom is probably gonna be the way to go. For me, at least, there's a couple companies that do push bars for high-ace vans. I'm not sure how the mounting compares to the Townace truck. Certain types of aftermarket accessories are a little bit tough. Going along those lines, a couple things that I've done to the truck over the past year since I've owned it. I've installed these KC Apollo lights up top. They were very easy to install. They're wired back down into the cab. And then I have them set up on two different switches right here. So they're nice. They're incredibly bright. I'd highly recommend them. I've also this shift knob. The shift knob in these trucks screws off, left to loosen, right to tighten. And there's a kit that I found that lets you adapt pretty much any type of shift knob that you want onto the thread of this OEM one. I'm not exactly sure what the thread is. I don't specifically remember, but I can show you which kit worked for me. This is the adapter kit that I would recommend if you wanted to change the shift knob in this truck, or let's say if you had a light ace, a very similar truck, probably a high ace as well. This kit from Speed Dogs, based out of Pennsylvania. I don't remember the exact thread that was in here, but yeah, one of these fit for my truck with that Hurst shift knob. Another thing that I did in the truck after owning it for a year, I put a couple speakers underneath this radio. So originally, if you change the radio in this truck, I definitely recommend it. The original radio that comes in here is AM only. So having Bluetooth or the ability to connect a phone is very nice, but truck only has one speaker, which is located, here's your steering wheel. It's located right behind this right here. So it gets a little bit muffled. It can be hard to hear. I put these speakers in just so I could have a little bit louder music volume as I was driving. I didn't like how difficult it was to hear music. There's not really a lot of sound dampening in these doors, so you do get a lot of road noise if you're traveling. A couple other things that I've done to the truck. One of them is when you get your truck finally registered and have your license plate come in, you actually need an adapter to make sure that the license plate can fit on the factory mounts for license plates. These are not the same dimension as US license plates. There's a couple companies, well, there's a ton of companies that make just cheap kits with bolts to adapt the license plate. And you pretty much have to pick one of those up for the most part. So definitely do that. Then one of the last things that I've done on the truck after having it for a year was I put some wheels on it. The original wheels were fine, but these wheels make it stick out a little bit more. I really like these wheels. These are 15s. The size of these is 215/70 R15. They do stick out a little bit, but I think they have a good look to them. Like I said, fit pretty well. I think they look good, but one thing to keep in mind is there was some trimming that had to be done. This right here is trimmed, as well as on the front here, this right here is trimmed. And that was to make it so these tires could clear when they were in a full turn. The backs fit fine. It's just the fronts that you really have to worry about. And it also honestly depends on your weight a little bit. If I'm riding with two people still, sometimes the other side will rub a little bit. But if I'm just riding by myself, this side will be fine and the other side will be fine. One thing that I would highly recommend if you put bigger wheels on this truck is doing a torsion bar lift. The torsion bars, if this is your driver's side front tire, it's located under the truck right here. Right there. This is just a little cover on the threads. They're on both sides. I would highly recommend cranking that up. It gave me at least about an inch more ground clearance in the front, so I didn't have to trim as much to make these wheels fit. Some people say it throws your alignment out a lot. Personally, it did not for me. I have tried to get an alignment with this truck, and I have not been successful at getting one, mainly because the two places that I called to bring it use a machine, and this truck does not pop up in their system. So they cannot pull the OEM specifications on what the alignment is supposed to be. If someone does an alignment by hand, I'm sure you'd be able to do it no problem. So the last topic that I want to cover with this truck after driving it for a year and putting 3,500 miles on it is, what is it like to drive? For a while, I was driving it every day to work, and honestly, it's a blast, but there's a couple things that you need to keep in mind. One is that you get a lot of attention. Everybody waves to this thing. There's just so much attention all the time, which is fine, but just keep that in mind. Another thing is it's not very fast. Your top speed, I believe, is probably around 65, 70 miles an hour, but I personally don't like to push my truck that hard, so it's not that quick. There's not a lot of get up and go. It'll get up to a decent road speed, but it does take a little while. Keep that in mind. Carry your speed through hills, because it is a dog, but it's a blast to drive. The other thing to keep in mind when driving this truck every day is that your cup holders are really small. You cannot fit normal cups in there. You can't fit normal water bottles in there. I believe the only thing that I've ever gotten to fit in there normally were cans of Red Bull. You can get adapters though, so I would highly recommend that if you're going to be doing a lot of driving in this truck. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope you found this helpful. If there's any other questions you have about owning a truck like this, please feel free to leave a comment and subscribe if you're new. Again, I really appreciate you watching. Thank you.